YeahThisMilk starring
Poetix, America, this is how you made me. 1989, baby, they told me the late 80s was crazy. Maybe it was the pregnant ladies with crack in their bloodstream, or the men who lacked the ability to roam free for what they call lack of integrity. That's typically the enemy's narrative comparative to that in authority or superiority, and they control the views in the news. The programming you choose was chosen before it got to you. But the 90s was a classic. Early 2000s, we started wilding, killing innocent black men from Florida to Staten Island. Started a war off the strength of crooked politicians. Only listen when it affects their budget or reputation. Chasing the picture of perfection, people preoccupied portraying pleasant presentation. Please spare me the pleasantries. Cause I saw the poor get poorer as the banks proceeded to pour up with proceeds from our forced labor. That's when you put people in positions where they gotta pay for their life with their life, and all these P's is for the prayers I pray. Like, Father, if I had to see my heroes get murdered, and our prophets assassinated, and our brothers, and our fathers, and our sisters, and our mothers, don't tell us this land is ours. Don't tell us this is it, and this is what was left for us. We've been fighting for so long, we just keep pushing on. We seen the bodies drop. You don't gotta tell us this war. Father, I believe in you. They dull our minds and numb our souls. Father, I'm fighting to get to you. I'm through with this world, Father. My spirit is yours. As for the flesh, that's just how America made me. We learned the hard way democracy don't equal equality. Capitalism don't mean freedom. Facts ain't always the truth, and the proof is a poof of smoke away from an illusion. Pacing back and forth, they corrupted the law. How could I respect it? I wasn't the first to rebel. I just put a match to it. Tactics play over backwards with every headline and headshot. This is where it stops. All my brothers walk a little higher now. We heard the sounds of doors closing. Judgment could never budge us. We defined every stride. Check out his swagger. He walked like a ball player. My brother cool, calm, collected. He watch before he speak, walk before he teach, stumble and keep it smooth like he never missed a beat. My brother knows how to move. He keep his ear to the streets. America, this is how you made me. A product of pain, pride, and passion. Descendants of perdition, this is the land that's never been cleansed. And as for the men, women, and children, I just figured they saw too much. Had to do more with less. These stories ain't never been told. Sold to secrecy. We don't know anything about how to confess. Like, how do you repent? Because I don't remember the first time. Because we came up and drew our own lines, created our own rules and our own laws, then danced in the moonlight when others couldn't hear our song. America, you made us strong when you did us wrong. Rebel. My man. Appreciate you. For everybody out there, I am Poetix. I am not an entertainer. I'm a poet. What's going on, man? Thanks for having me out here, bro.
Thanks for coming out, man. Tell me, where were you raised, man?
Where was I raised?
Yeah. And before you go into it, how would you raise this and make me feel like I was raised in your area?
Man, to be honest with you, I had a kind of unique upbringing. I was born in Staten Island, New York, right? But I was born in a real tight-knit Afrocentric community. I was raised Hebrew Israelite, and that's kind of how my early childhood days was like surrounded. That was it. It was a tight-knit community. Ain't nothing really get out. Like, I didn't really know of white Jesus until I was like 10, 11 years old.
Oh shit,
you know
that's
like,
good.
I was raised, I was raised up. We said Yahweh. It was Yahweh, and it's like our family. It was like real close. Like, we was in the ministry. Like, my mother and my father was like pastors and pastors in the ministry. You know what I'm saying? They were speakers. They was, you know what I mean? They went to Israel. They did the 40 days in the wilderness. Like, they was like devout. So the family kind of like followed up right behind that. So I was raised in Staten Island. We had the Babas, we had the Imams, we had the, we just had an Afrocentric community. You know what I'm saying? So it was real tight knit. But I say that because outside of that, you know what I mean, Staten Island, Stapleton, you know what I mean? Like Wu-Tang's in that area. You go up to Park Hill, you got, you know what I mean? It's the outside environment was a little bit different from the inside environment. So I was always in that. And then from there, I had family in the city. Like, I always spent a lot of time in Harlem. I always spent a lot of time. I did the holidays in the Bronx. Like, so it was just like that. But then, I think I moved up to Pennsylvania when I was like 13. Once I moved up to Pennsylvania, it was a whole culture shock because I moved to the mountains. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of how I was like, it was another thing. Like, you had the outside culture, and then you got inside the house and your family. And we always had this, it's us against the world type of mentality because we were forced to be so close-knit, you know what I mean? Just growing up in that real spiritual environment. So I moved up to the mountains, and that was a culture shock. You know what I'm saying? You got when I first moved up there, black people were just moving in. It was that migration because a lot of people moved from New York to Pennsylvania because it was cheaper to live in Pennsylvania, and they still had like bus services so you could work. Because my father was a teacher. He taught in New York City for 22 years. You know what I'm saying? He was in the board of education. So we moved up to Pennsylvania. Still a little bit of culture shock. And then it was kind of like a racial divide because it was a predominantly white neighborhood, my right area, but you had black people moving up. And so at one point, they split the high schools into two. So they had Pocono Mountain and Pocono Mountain East, Pocono Mountain West. Pocono Mountain East was predominantly white. That's where, or they had it sectioned off by development or community. So if you were affluent, you were white, you went to East. But if you were black in the black communities, then you went to West. So my high school ended up being 50-50. It was like 51-49. And you know, as black people moved up there, they brought the city environment, they brought the city feel. So then it becomes like a mix of mountain and like the city. And like it just was a real unique upbringing because you saw so many different things. You know what I mean? Like, especially at growing up, I witnessed white people in their essence. You know what I'm saying? I feel like for black people, we always see what they portray. You know what I'm saying? Like they put out there. You know, they always got that smile on their face, and they always tell you something and give you a presentation. But the way I was brought up, I was in like their environment a lot to a point where I saw how they really operate, how they move, what their thinking is, what their ideology is, what their moral and ethical code is, what's good, what's bad, why things are the way they are. And so it's always interesting that you come back to your community and you see how people move, and I saw like the distinction between the two. You know what I'm saying? So it was real interesting, like being brought up like that. I said I was you know what I'm saying? Like I was in high school anyway. I was an athlete. You know what I'm saying? I was an athlete. And I was a captain of the football team. So
hold on, let me stop you before you go too far. When you said you was around white people, so you got to see them in their true essence.
mm-hmm.
Some people watching has never been around white people in their true essence. Can you break down in detail what you seen or what experiences you had with white people?
The biggest thing I could say is the deception. What's really big for white people is perception. That's like always big about, it doesn't matter what it is, it's a matter of how you can make someone perceive it. And that's just something like, even from just being in a house to have a conversation with them, to some of the choices they make. I've worked with white people, I've worked with people in, you know what I'm saying, in labor industry, being a lumberjack, you know, like different jobs, and being in like close proximity with them, and out cut off from everyone else. You know what I'm saying? Like in that environment. So you hear what they really saying, but then you go out and you hear what they say to other people. And the biggest thing to me, especially being young, because there was certain things I didn't really understand, but one thing I always stood out to me was like, yo, it's all about presentation for them. It's never about what the actual substance is. It's all about how they present something. And so that maybe I noticed that. Then it's like their value system is different. You know
Before you go to the value system, let me say something. It's funny you say that because I believe that we adopting, not me and you, but I believe black people are adopting some of those tendencies.
It's terrible. Actually, that's one of the biggest things that I kind of want to speak about for people. It's like we can't imitate this greater culture, and not greater as in better, as in greater as in surrounding us is bigger. It's more mainstream. We can't imitate it because unless you do the research and understand the foundation, how this culture was built. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was built off of rape, murder. It was built off of, you know, oppression, genocide, depression. You know what I'm saying? It was built
lies, manipulation.
Yeah,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So if we imitate it, we're imitating a structure that has a faulty foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And for black people, we got to know our true history, because if we go back, we were the first ones to introduce all of these things, mathematics, all these institutions that we have now, that we introduced them. You know what I'm saying? We were the creators, we are the origins of it. And the thing is, though, as thing has went through time, as I mentioned before, white people are all about presentation. So there's a presentation of what they've learned, because they learned it from us. If you do your history, they learned it from us. So they have the presentation of what we taught, but there's substance behind it, and this substance has reason and purpose, and that's what we got to get back to, the reason and purpose of what is being put out here. But a lot of times you have white people who just have the presentation of it, and just being with them, being around them, you see, like, you know, we can't imitate what they're doing, because it has a lasting effect on everything around us, not just American culture, but all over the world. Their ideologies are being spread, and those ideologies has created an imbalance within humanity, and we see that based off of how many people are hungry, how many people are living in poverty, and then how many people have excess, and how many people have so much more than what they need. There's such a gap, there's such a disparity, and that's because it comes from a certain ideology and a certain way of thinking. If I taught you that, yo, you know what, you having 1,000 and this person having 1, if I taught you that, yo, that's a good thing because, you know, you worked hard for your 1,000 and this person didn't work hard enough. If I teach you that over and over and over, you'll start to accept that as an idea, as a concept. But if I taught you, yo, everybody in the community works to get everything, a distribution, an equal distribution of wealth and resources, then if you had 1,000, this person had 1, you in your mind subconsciously be like, oh no, I need to give him something. It's something that we're taught. It's an ideology. So when we start imitating the ideology that says I can have everything I want and it doesn't matter what other people have, or, you know what I mean, okay, maybe I'll care a little bit. Once we start teaching that, that means that we're now imitating the people who are responsible for colonization, imperialism, you know, certain genocides. Like, you know, if you do your history, you'll go and see what they've done throughout history, and then you'll get a better, like, better understanding of why we can't imitate what they've done.
That's real. That's real.
Appreciate that.
It seemed like, based on what you saying, it seemed like they mastered living in falsehood.
You know, it is though. They so what I've seen from them is that their idea of power and control is different from our idea of power and control. So I come from an understanding where there's two different definitions of power. There's power as in making something happen, and then there's power in making someone do something. So for black people, making something happen, our power is to create. Our power is to build. Our power is to take something small and make it grand. For white people, and you know, it's raw and uncut, I'll say it, but I don't want to make this a black and white thing, because it's not a black and white thing. It's more like a mindset and ideologies. It just so happened that white people reinforce this ideology. So I want to make it clear, it's not a black and white thing issue. It's more like, it's more of a mindset ideology. Like I said, it just so happens that white people are the ones that are enforcing and perpetuating this ideology. So going back to what I said, you have black people who have the power of creating, the power to do something, the power to build something, the power to take it small and make it grand. White people, they see power as control, the power to do something to someone, the power to have something over someone, the control. If I can make you do something, that means I'm powerful. You know what I'm saying? For black people, it's, yo, if I have the ability to build this, that in my subconscious equates to power. You know what I'm saying? My power is in me, where their power is over someone. And you can see that even in their religious structure, how they have a idea and concept of God being this oversee from the top, where black people traditionally have a God, an idea and concept of God or supreme being or most high that stems from within. So there's a lot of differences within our communities and our mindset, you know what I'm saying? And going back to what you said before, we can't imitate one because that's not our origins. It's like putting a monkey in a no pun intended. I like monkeys, so I said the word monkey, but I know it's a racial trigger for certain people. But it's like putting a monkey inside a fish tank. He's not gonna survive because it's not his habitat. You put black people in a European culture and ideology and ideological system, we're not gonna thrive because we don't move based on that, like inherently, based on our DNA, based on how our bodies are wired. We don't operate in this fashion. So you put us in this environment, you're gonna see that people not gonna be able to strive and reach their best potential. Now don't get me wrong, we're great people. We have tremendous abilities and we have tremendous connection to the Most High. So you're gonna see people, you know, being able to, you know, grow. You're gonna be able to succeed, as they say. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the ideal for us, and it's not conducive to our spiritual growth. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we can gain material value, we can gain certain statuses because we have that ability. But what is ideal for our people is to grow spiritually, and we're not in the correct environment for that.
Staying on white people, how did it feel? How did it feel when you saw the white Jesus for the first time? Because a lot of black people, including myself, I never experienced not seeing a white Jesus until 10. Right. That's a gift.
Right. I feel you. And even growing up, like, I have to give a shout out to my parents. I consider myself very blessed and fortunate to have both my parents. You know, my family, I come from 6 kids. My mother and my father have been together my father passed away in 2015, but they were together from from basically my mother was 17 and my father was 21, and my pops just passed away in 2015. He was 60. So y'all do the math. It was like 40 something years that they was together, or 39 years that they were together. So seeing that, they had already like taught me a foundation. So it was a solid foundation for me. You know what I mean? I saw, and don't get me wrong, we had our struggles because, you know, my pops was the only one that worked with a family of 6 kids, and we would always have people living with us because that was just a responsibility of yours being in the ministry. If somebody didn't have, if somebody needed, you was there because that was the strength of the community. So, you know, we had our struggles, but when I was introduced to the idea of Jesus, I didn't feel anything because it wasn't like a shock. Like, what do I do? Like, which one's right? Which one? I just figured, nah, that ain't it. That's not it. That's like someone telling you, yo, the sky is purple, and you look up, and you're like, no, it ain't. You know what I mean? I ain't got no more real thoughts about it. I just know you're wrong.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And then the fact that I had always been taught my history, you know what I'm saying, been taught where we come from and how powerful we was, like from the beginning, I never had to question it. You know what I mean? It wasn't until later that I found out, and I started to do research, how much they tried to cover those things up. That was the biggest shock to me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yo, what? This is what y'all teaching them? Nah, that ain't true. You know what I'm saying? But being presented with white Jesus, I was like, all right, well, I don't go to church anyway. I go to the ministry, the temple. You know what I'm saying? So it was really nothing for me. And then you don't really get into those conversations with, you know, I'm what, 11, 12, 13. You don't get into those conversations with your friends and peers.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you just sit back as a kid, like, because my aunt, two of my aunts and my uncle, they were bishops in the church, and now my uncle is a pastor. I'm a 3rd generation preacher's kid. So my grandfather was a Baptist minister. My father taught in the ministry, the Hebrew Israelite ministry. So I came from it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then other affiliations on both sides, my mother and my father. But once you get taught something, and I'm naturally hard-headed. Like, I don't just take what people say to me and just like, oh, that's it. So I've always
dissect it.
Nah, I don't think that's it. So I've always been able to just like distinguish or just discern what was the truth for me and what was, you know, this perception. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's how I felt about it.
You say your parents was together for almost 40 years, and your father was a teacher. What did he teach?
History.
History?
He's a history teacher, and he was the dean of administration, and he was the teachers union representative, I believe, something like that. He had some title within the teachers union. He had 2 masters. He was an author.
Wait, what was the name of his book?
America and Prophecy. That's one of them. He had what's that girl called? Obadiah in the damn.
Just say his name so people can look it up if they want to.
Terrence Crosby is his name, like it's his actual, you know what I'm saying, government name, Terrence D. Crosby, but
and it should be on Amazon or whatever.
This is a different time. So
this
we didn't have Amazon. Like,
did you read his books?
Yeah.
They dope?
What? They teach you they put it into a perspective. So the thing about my father was, and I'm not saying that just because of my pops, he's just the smartest man in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, because he always would study the spiritual, study the book, the Bible, you know what I'm saying, like all the spiritual teachings, but then he would go back, and because he was a history teacher, he would always cross-reference it with history. So he was able to write a book where he would overlap the two, so you can understand how these things are relevant based off of our history, and then how they're relevant based on your spiritual teaching.
Right,
so he laid it down in a certain type of way, and so Eden in the prophecy of Obadiah. Eden in the prophecy of Obadiah. That talks about black people being the children of the true children of the Most High, the true children of Israel. And it talks about what it means to be a Hebrew Israelite, what the name Yahweh or Yahweh at the time meant. You know what I'm saying? Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, what that actually means. So that gave me a lot of like understanding. And then American Prophecy is, to be honest with you, it gives you more of a, if you just come naked into it, it's going to sound like conspiracy theory, you know what I'm saying? But it follows in the same footsteps. It's like a David Icke, a Michael Moore, those type of genres. You know what I'm saying? So just breaking things down to you on a cultural level. So yeah, that was my pops. You know what I'm saying? He's the only man I really actually ever looked up to.
Most definitely. Tell me. I mean, that's a great person to look up to. I mean, he got 2 master's degree. He was married for 40-something years.
Crazy thing
He
is,
fucking wrote books. He took care of the whole family. How many brothers and sisters you had?
6.
6 brothers and sisters. What type of man? That is Superman, bro.
I feel you.
That is Superman.
I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Rest the power. You know what I'm saying? And the biggest thing though, and I always remember, is that he never forced anything on me. You know what I'm saying? He never was like, you know, if you were a teacher and you got these accolades and you got all this stuff, you'd be like, well, my son has to do this, or you push him in a certain. He never ever pushed me to do something that he wanted me to do. You know what I'm saying? He always let me find my own way. I remember one day him telling me, and this is right before high school, this is right after high school, and I'm about to go to college. He's like, yo, son, if you don't want to do this, if you just feel like this is all bullshit and you want to go and leave and travel in the country and you don't want to go to school, like, yo, do it now and don't look back. And whatever you feel like, whatever your heart is driving you to, go and do it. So yeah, like that was definitely probably the biggest influence in my life.
How many other people? Because I mean, you're a dope poet, you're a dope actor. You do multiple things, bro. How many of your other brothers and sisters? How many brothers? Do you have any sisters?
Yeah.
Break down how many. What's the
yeah, I got 3 older sisters and 2 younger brothers.
Do any of them do artistic stuff like you or like your father?
Every single one of them.
That's some genes,
Every single
bro.
one of them. And to be honest with you, I was the late one. You feel me? I was a late bloomer when it came to artistic expression because I always wanted to play football. That was my passion. Like, I didn't have no, oh, what do you want to do when you grow older? Play football. Okay, what's your backup plan? Play football. Okay, in case that don't work out, I'm gonna play football. You know what I mean? And so that was my thing. But I was surrounded by artists. My mother is a spoken word artist, a poet. She's written books. She has at least 3 or 4 books, and she's been talking to me about publishing her next book. Me and her wrote a play together. She's an artist. She got poems. Like, and then I'm talking about poems. Like, we do spoken word. Her is like the textbook format of poems. You know what I'm saying? So she has poetry. A lot of times what we do, people don't realize is prose. You know what I'm saying? It's a freestyle verse. It's a more of an open format. Poetry, most poetry has actual rubrics of how many syllables to be used, the breakdown of the stanzas and things like that. So she's the truest form of poetry. So she has poetry, books. She does arts and crafts. She makes benches. She makes furniture. You know, she's just a creative. Then my oldest sister.
Stand right here with your mother. What's the name of her books?
Man, to be honest with you, I don't even know the name of her books. They're all
Bad Son.
blessings.
Bad Son.
Nah, right. Hey, what you mean you don't know? So I know she got blessed, but she has a few of them.
She have a few books?
Yeah, she has at least like 3 or 4, and
That's
my pops
dope.
has at
That's
least
dope.
3. And that's just me, like, cause you got to think when I was coming up, right, and they was writing all these books, it's so commonplace to me. Like, I didn't know anything outside of that. So they might have books and stuff that they selling and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, I guess that's what all adults do.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
right.
It wasn't until I got older until I looked back on what they've done and really started to break down as I entered into my own. Like, oh snap! Like, I'm really in somebody's footsteps. Like, my mother wrote these books. Now her books are more spiritually guided. You know what I'm saying? My father is more the historian. My mother is more the spiritual. Now, don't get me wrong, you know what I'm saying? They both have they complementary features. But my mother was more spiritually guided, more spiritually inclined. So all of hers is about your connection to the Most High. How do you strengthen your connection to the Most High? Where my father was like, okay, learn about this, learn about that, know your history. You know what I'm saying? So you get that
balance.
Yeah, that balance. So I don't really know the names of them, but I know
say her name. So it might not be online either, right?
Nah. Well, now she does. Because she kept writing. You know
you know what she should do? Y'all should upload your father books too.
Yeah, no, man, we'll get into that part of the story.
You can translate that.
We'll talk about that more when my father, because after he passed away, there's a lot of things that happened, a lot of things got lost because we ended up losing the house. But we could touch on that a little later. As for my father and my mother's name, My mother's name is Faye Crosby, my father's name is Terrence Crosby. But in the ministry, they're known as Hodam Yah, Ben Melchizedek, that's my father, and my mother is Hawa No Fear. You know what I'm saying? So they were.
Your father's name is what?
Hodam Yah, Ben Melchizedek.
What's your mother's name?
Hawa No Fear.
That's hard. That's hard.
Appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you think about it, like when you growing up and you hear people call you your father Hodam Yah, you like, all right, whatever. I don't know what that means.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how no fear, okay. And then you learn what it meant, and then you understand.
Well, break down what both of them mean.
Well, I don't know how they got them. They got them. They were named Hodam Yah and How No Fear around the time I was actually born.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up seeing it different, and I never really had the inclination to ask them like, what does that mean or anything like that. It was more so like you just understand it from what they say, what they do, and how they show up in the ministry.
Most definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Like my father.
Your parents just sound like they some dope motherfuckers, bro. It
I'm thankful.
When you got parents like that, bro, it set a standard of greatness.
Yeah, I feel you.
It set a standard of like you can't be nothing beside. If you're not great following that, fuck you doing with your life, bro. You know what I mean? Tell me about your brothers and sisters, because you said all of them do art.
All of them.
Let's just.
In one way or another. And I got two sisters.
Can I ask you something real quick? I'm sorry to cut you off. Have your mother ever seen any of your features?
Like, hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember the first time my mother seen me do spoken word. I brought a tear to her eye.
That's dope.
And her friend. Because I had did a piece that was like,
about your mother?
Deep. Nah, it wasn't about her. It was just crazy. But she know my writings. She know my writings. She's read my stuff. You know what I mean? And she's probably been my biggest supporter. My biggest like reason for keep going is my mother. You know what I'm saying? Because she understands what I'm talking about, and she understands the plight of a black man, but not just the plight of a black man, the plight of a conscious man, of a man on a mission, because she was married to one.
Most
you know
definitely.
What I'm saying? So she know even the things that even the trip falls, the pitfalls, even the pitfalls. She understood things. So when I got in trouble throughout my life, and there's been times I got in trouble, she always understood like my like how I looked at things. You know what I'm saying? So if I had a run-in with a cop and the cop exchanged words and stuff like that, she never looked at me like, oh, it's disappointing. She understood like, no, you're a black man, and it's in you to stand up for you and hold your ground. Even if the greater society is gonna say, oh, well, just do what the cop says. You can't just tell that to somebody. You can't tell somebody to wake up in the morning and be submissive. You feel me? Like that goes against your natural inclination.
Your manhood.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny you say that. I'm teaching my son how to drive, and I told him, I said, do what the cops say, but if you feel threatened, it's either you or them, make sure it's them.
Right.
Don't let them choke you to death, shoot you to death. Don't let them do none of that stuff. Yeah, we gotta teach our kids how to move with police, but we also gotta teach our kids how to protect themselves if need be from the police, because they one of our biggest enemies, if not our biggest enemy.
Right, I feel you, and that's a big thing, because I actually got into a conversation with a man at a kind of like a community forum type thing, and what he was saying is, yo, you know, you don't really have any rights, so once a cop pulls you over, just do everything he says, and I understood what